Hello, thank you for coming. Thank you to ClickHouse for inviting me to speak. My name's James Carpenter. I'm a senior infrastructure engineer with Laravel on the Nightwatch team, and I'm going to talk to you today about Nightwatch. But first of all, let's go back a step. What's Laravel? I'm sure not everyone knows. Laravel is a complete, batteries included, application development ecosystem with a focus on developer experience at the forefront. So Laravel offers tools to build, deploy, and monitor web applications for anything from small indie devs up to some of the large companies that you can see on the screen there. And we do that by offering a suite of tools. At the core of that is the Laravel framework that was written by our founder, Taylor Otwell, with a focus on simple, elegant syntax, speed, ease of use. We then have starter kits for popular front-end frameworks, React, Vue, to get you up and running, without reinventing the wheel on things like login, admin panels, etc. And then a robust ecosystem of packages for other common functionality, things like authentication and what have you. On the deployment side, the first commercial Laravel product, a little over 10 years ago now, I think, was Laravel Forge. That's still probably our biggest product today. That's a self-managed VPS management tool for Laravel applications. We also have Vapor, which is a serverless deployment tool for Laravel on AWS Lambda. And recently launched Laravel Cloud, which is a fully managed platform as a service for Laravel applications. And fantastic. Go check it out. It's very cool. On the monitoring side, we have Telescope, which is a local debugging and insight tool. We have Pulse for performance and usage tracking in deployed applications. And of course, as of about 2 days ago, we have Nightwatch. Nightwatch is a hosted, fully managed application observability platform specifically for Laravel applications. So let's rewind again and take a look at what the challenge was that we were trying to solve with Nightwatch. So on the one hand, we've got Laravel, the framework, the ecosystem. It's simple, it's intuitive, fast, but also powerful and scalable, very easy to work with. On the other side, we have application monitoring, which is none of those things. Generally, it's complex, it's difficult to set up, it can be very costly, and as you increase in size, generally it becomes more and more difficult to manage. So around the beginning of last year, 2024, development for Nightwatch kicked off with the brief that you see in front of you. We needed powerful insights. We needed something specific for Laravel. It had to be zero config. We're all about ease of use and developer experience. And it also had to work at big scale because we want to support large and small customers, and it's a managed service, so it's going to be a lot of customers. Fast forward 6 months or so, Laracon Australia. So Laracon is our annual developer conference. We hold them in the US, Europe, Australia, India. I don't think I'm missing any, but maybe. And we unveiled what Nightwatch was going to be. This is a little bit of video of our team leads, Jess Archer, introducing the dashboard and what Nightwatch will look like. So by this time we had obviously some UI, we had an architecture worked out. The decision had already been made to go with ClickHouse. We've heard why. You know, it scales very well, both in terms of ingest and query performance. The storage compression is fantastic. It's easy to work with. There's actually an existing Laravel ClickHouse driver, which is fantastic. And we had a proof of concept working with the agent, which runs alongside your Laravel application, which sends events to a Lambda. The Lambda writes those to Kafka topics, and from there it's ingested into ClickHouse. Around the same time, something else happened. I joined the team, and when I joined the team, the conversation went something like, this is what we have, this is what we want, but bigger. And so that's been, you know, sort of the bulk of my work since then is figuring out how to make this scale. So the first question is, okay, but how big? You know, bigness is a sliding scale. Big to some people is not that big to others. Well, pretty big, it turns out. Yeah, intimidatingly big with the sort of projected throughput that we were expecting. That's fine. That's cool. That's cool. Don't panic. Think about the priorities and, you know, triage. Everyone who's a software developer knows how to do this, I think. So first of all, we need this quick. You know, Laravel, the framework moves fast. This is a Laravel project. We've got 6 months until we launch. It needs to be multi-region. Whatever we do, it's got to happen quickly. It's got to perform excellently. You know, we're all about user experience and developer experience. We need events to come in quickly, and we need queries to be performant. You know, people are not going to like clicking around a dashboard that takes ages to load. And we need scale. So we need to start out pretty big. We had a wait list of nearly 20,000 signups, and we're expecting that to get really big. You know, we have some enterprise scale customers interested, and just, you know, the sheer number of customers that we're expecting. So usually what that means is, you know, scope, resources, deadline, pick two, and figure out where you're going to drop the ball, kind of thing. Until we started to look at ClickHouse Cloud. And started to realize that, well, this is kind of what we have decided. We've got the agent, Lambda, Kafka. It already says ClickPipes, you know what's coming. Some sort of consumer and ClickHouse. Lambda obviously scales very easily. Kafka, there's a managed service for that on AWS. So it was really the last two that, you know, needed complexity. But with ClickHouse Cloud, what if we could make all that somebody else? Oh, sorry, I mean a managed service. Maybe we can have both. You know, big scale, minimal complexity. Maybe we can do this in 6 months, really. So that's the ingest. What about the dashboard? There's still some complexity there. Okay, well, lucky for us, ClickHouse Cloud is AWS native, as are we. It has compute separation, so we can separate our ingest and our query resources so they don't impact each other. And we can use AWS Private Link to get private connection to that. And that's on the ingest and the dashboard side. It's very important because egress costs out of AWS when you're talking about big volumes of data, very expensive, but also latency. We need this to be quick. And security. It's a private link, it says so in the name, keeps things nice and secure. But what about multi-region? You said we need more than one region. Yep, so it starts to look something like this. We've got ClickHouse Cloud in the middle, ClickPipes and ClickHouse services, compute separation. We've now got Postgres in multiple regions. We've got some compute there. We're using ECS and Cloudflare in front of it. But, compute's only in one place. We've got customers all over the place. Latency is going to be a problem. So it starts to look something like this. We've now got compute in multiple regions. We've got cross-region private link into ClickHouse Cloud for our dashboards so that they can access cross-region data depending on where the customer is hitting the dashboard from and where their data is sitting. And then we've got Cloudflare in front doing some latency-based load balancing. But, we said multi-region, not two regions, so there's going to be more of these. And, we've got some non-regional data as well, so that needs to sit in one place. We need read replicas. Very quickly, it starts to look like this. And we're back we're back to the problem we started with, which is we need to keep complexity down. How do we manage that in order to get something that will scale reliably in a short amount of time? So how? First of all, Terraform everything. Terraform's still really the only truly kind of ubiquitous cross-platform infrastructure orchestration tool. There's a great provider for AWS. ClickHouse has a fantastic provider which works with all of the ClickHouse cloud resources. So your networking, your ClickPipes, your ClickHouse service itself can all be deployed and managed with Terraform, which is fantastic because it really keeps that complexity down. And Cloudflare as well for our CDN. Next, make everything modular. So anytime there's a repeated pattern, we've got compute in multiple regions, we've got multiple Postgres and ClickHouse databases. Make everything into a Terraform module so that you're not making one change 1,000 times. If you've got discrete functions, separate those. So ingest is separate from the dashboard resources. That keeps, again, the sort of interconnectedness to a minimum, allows you to make changes in one area that don't impact on another. You can still pass, variables and configuration between the two. And then each region becomes a case of, well, just stamp out another one of these. It doesn't have to be management of the whole thing. You just manage the smaller components. And then, when we eventually rolled multi-region into production with US and EU, the EU setup was literally a case of adding the EU region to the ingest and dashboard repositories and hitting go. The last thing is Grafana, everything. Again, we can scrape from all the places that we need with Grafana with Prometheus. ClickHouse allows you to scrape a really wide array of ClickHouse metrics, including ClickPipes, into Prometheus. Same with Kafka, and AWS has native tooling for that as well. So we can monitor and alert on our infrastructure from one place as well. Oh yeah, and you should probably use an application performance management tool, but I hear there's a good one for Laravel. So next up, testing. If you're going to go big, you need to know that it can go big without falling over. With something as complicated as this, that's difficult, especially if you're expecting the kind of scale that we are. So we had kind of a three-phase approach to that. First of all, brute force. We took a sample of kind of real-world application events from an internal application that had been hooked up to Nightwatch. We fed that sample into the Kafka producer performance test. We stamped out an ingest stack with Terraform, and we used a set of ECS containers to fire those events into Kafka at a varying rate of throughput until something broke. And that was the Kafka cluster hitting network limits. That was click pipes being saturated and needing to scale up. That was the ClickHouse replicas needing to be horizontally or vertically scaled to keep up with the throughput. And through sort of stage testing of that, we eventually were able to get to 1 million events a second through Kafka, click pipes, and into ClickHouse. And frankly, we could have gone bigger, but at that point, we've proved a point. We know where the breakpoints are for each part of the infrastructure and what to expect, how to size things for a certain load. But that doesn't really do much for the dashboard. So next up, we deployed this to our largest internal service. Like I said, that's Forge, and let the Forge team, send data at 100% sample rate for a couple of months and use the dashboard. And it was about 3 billion events over the first month. They found out some really useful stuff. We found out some really useful stuff. And happily the dashboard performed admirably, even with that amount of data. And that's looking at 30 days worth of data in one go. So 3 billion events on a single graph, and being able to render that in a second or less than a second. Then the final phase, early access, we obviously had a big wait list to choose from, and some partners that we could work with. We opened it up to a set of customers, and again said, show us what you got, send as much as you can, use the dashboard, find out what works and what doesn't. That also went very well, thankfully. And some of the larger customers involved there had some pretty significant volume. The one that stands out is probably Geocodio. They do like a IP geolocation service. They have about 160 API servers, I think, all sending to us at 100% sample rate, about 30,000 events a second. And again, still able to ingest that in sub 30 second latency and query and use the dashboard performantly as well. So the only thing that was left was to launch. And that happened Tuesday morning. There's some stats from the first 24 hours. 5,000 users, 500 million events in the first 24 hours. And that's probably as small as that number's ever going to be, because we're only going to get more from there. And the one that stands out to me here is 97 milliseconds for the average request duration to the dashboard. We're talking really, really big volumes of data here, and still the performance is outstanding. And that kind of bears out in the feedback that we've had so far as well. It's been really well received. We haven't had any major issues, fingers crossed. Yeah, and I'll finish up on my personal favorite quote, which came in today. And I mean, that reflects how I feel about Nightwatch, but it's nice to hear someone else say it. And that's it. So if you've got questions, or if you'd like to look at the dashboard, I can do a bit of a demo as well.
Any questions for the guys? Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you surprised that you got that much traction given there's like other monitoring frameworks already existing for this that were natively used before TFP?
Sorry, so the question is, what?
I'm still surprised that it's that popular directly on release. Given
Right.
that there's so much competition obviously in this field already.
Yeah, okay. So the question is, how is it so popular and so competitive immediately, given that this is a very competitive space already? There's a lot of observability tools available, and I think it comes back to the brief that we spoke about. Taylor first described it as obsessively optimized for Laravel. It really hooks in deep to the framework, which means it can also have zero config. So, we're talking about drop an API key into your environment variables, install a package, and you're ingesting events. And because of those two things, the insight that you can get for the amount of effort is just incredible, compared to instrumenting something yourself, or using something more generic. I won't name names, but other monitoring platforms that serve a lot of different use cases. You're just not going to get the same degree of insight without putting a lot more effort in. Yeah.
What do you scrape ClickHouse Kafka every year? In what scenario that you do that? And you need to the scraping,
Scraping the metrics. Okay, so the question was about scraping metrics from ClickHouse, AWS, and Kafka. So we obviously need to monitor all of our infrastructure to make sure it's all healthy. This was particularly useful in the load testing that we did initially, to find out what instance sizing was going to look like. We now know, based on those metrics and the testing that we've done, what it looks like when something starts to get close to capacity. For instance, ClickHouse database ingest, if your parts per partition start to get high, that means that the cluster's not keeping up. In Kafka, it could be CPU utilization, or network throttling. There's measures that you can understand, but you need to know which ones and have them tracked and alerting. Unfortunately, there's no Nightwatch for all of those things. Any other questions? Yeah.
Let's say if something like Nightwatch were to be replicated for any other tech stack, Node or Spring Boot or something, in your opinion, would it be like this crazy, or how do you look at it?
So the question is, how would I look at replicating this for another tech stack that's not Laravel? Well, I think that the approach that we've taken has been very successful in using, very proven managed services, because, number one, using proven tech, there's a lot of information out there about how to deal with those, and what to do if things start going wrong. And then also managed services obviously just keeps the overhead down. The less things that you are responsible for, the easier it is to manage. The Nightwatch team, for context, is 7 people, and they've built this. I mean, it started with 2, I think, and they've built this over the course of less than 18 months. Yeah.
Less than 3 days being live. Are you already thinking about what's next?
Yes. Yeah. So we already had a pretty good idea of what next features were going to be, and that's been reinforced by feedback from users. We've also discovered some other things that people want to do with the tool that we didn't know about. But I think first will be more granular control of sampling, filtering, what data ends up in Nightwatch, because even though they're all Laravel applications, every application is different. Some have literally millions of cache events coming through that are of no particular interest. Others rely very heavily on database queries. So having finer grained control of that will be first off. And then there are lots of other ways that we can go feature-wise, but server performance metrics is something that I know is on the list as well. So managing CPU and memory. I won't mention anything else in case it's not on the immediate roadmap. I don't want to throw ourselves under the bus. Thank you very much.